final Spencer speaker, Sophie Hochman.
When I was in second grade, we had library day once a week where you could go, you check out whatever you wanted. It was this whole big thing. And every library day, the whole year, I would come home and sit down at my dining room table with a stack of books from the Hinduism section. And I would pore over these beautiful images from Diwali, the Hindu Festival of Lights. And I saw candles floating down rivers, these colorful sand mandalas. And I'm like a 7-year-old Jewish kid. I barely know how to read. I knew nothing about Hinduism. But something about these books just had me totally mesmerized. And so, cut to about 10 years later, I'm sitting at that same table. This time I'm flipping through the Middlebury course catalog, and I see Hindu traditions. And I think, yeah, I gotta fulfill that little kid's dream. I'm so glad I did. Our first reading in Hinduism class was by the poet A.K. Ramanujan. And Ramanujan was telling the story of his father. He was a very religious, devout Hindu man. Spent a lot of time studying the Gita, which is this epic Indian poem, a lot of time worshiping deities in his local temple. He believed in the creation of the world of mankind at the hands of the Hindu gods and goddesses. At the same time, though, this man has a day job. He's a mathematician, actually, an astronomer. And as such, he believes in the theory of evolution. He believes in the Big Bang, believes how we got here scientifically. And I'm reading this essay, and I'm like, how do those two things add up at all, right? Like, these two truths to me seem totally different. And according to Ramanujan, it's actually a perfectly reasonable view to have in the Hindu tradition, the idea that multiple truths can coexist without canceling each other out. The logic here is that in this world, you're going to navigate a whole host of different environments, right? There's the local temple where you pray. There's the lab where you work as a mathematician. And as such, it's not really feasible to live life according to one set of principles defining what is true, what is good, or what is moral. Ramanujan called this idea context specificity, the idea that particular circumstances require particular action. Context specificity to me, immediately it went far beyond Hinduism. Context specificity is how we act every day, why we interact differently with different people, move about differently in different spaces. And yet, here in the United States, our society is structured in a way that is decidedly context-free, right? We had these morals that the country was founded on, we write this constitution, all these ways that society is supposed to function are just very top-down, end-all, be-all. And nowhere was this more apparent to me than in our criminal justice system. A couple years ago, I was a junior in high school, and I took this class in the prison industrial complex. And I remember sitting in that classroom, my eyes just opening wider and wider as I learned about the true extent of racial injustice embedded into every element of our prison system. Knowing what I know now with Ramanujan's idea about context specificity, I realize that it is fundamentally flawed, that the system meant to uphold morality in this country is comprised of vast overarching laws that have no regard for the nuance of the human experience. And so I'm thinking about how this idea of context specificity could maybe play into the prison system, right? Maybe we pay more attention to the circumstances surrounding a particular situation, a particular case, who was involved, how did they grow up, things like that. And I ended up talking to my Hinduism professor, this woman, Dr. Jennifer Ortegren, and I'm like, yeah, what about context specificity applied to the prison system? And she looks at me and goes, yeah, we have that in the prison system already. It's called racism. And I'm like, shit, you're right. And one of the billion examples that I could pull, the ACLU in 2014 reported that black men in the federal system are likely to receive sentences that are 20% longer than white men convicted of similar crimes, even when they have similar criminal histories. Now, there's not a law written into our legal code that says that judges can do that they can discriminate like that, right? That's not one of these vast overarching laws I'm talking about. So clearly, there is plenty of room for subjectivity in the system. That subjectivity is what is allowing such widespread, blatant racial discrimination. That really just goes to show what Ramanujan was saying. It's not feasible to live by some objective way of looking at the world, all these principles, because individual perspective is going to seep through one way or another, and now it's seeping through in the form of bias. We cannot apply an objective methodology to a subjective world. What methodology do we apply, though, right? What would a more contextually specific approach to criminal justice reform actually look like? And huge disclaimer here, I took a class on the prison system once, and I took one class on Hinduism, and to say that I am any voice of authority on this issue is kind of a disservice to how serious it is. But something I've been thinking about generally is how I think that we should be repealing or looking into repealing a lot of these vast laws and policies that have been in the system for decades, if not centuries, and instead structure the criminal justice system in a way that holistically, comprehensively evaluates individual cases, right? In a way that takes into account multiple perspectives, in a way that concretely acknowledges and accounts for all these biases that have so impacted the system. I think we should be specifically accounting for things like race, socioeconomic status, the whole host of things that give you one concrete place here in the society so that they will have a reduced impact on the way the system treats you. And I really needed someone to bounce these ideas off of. So on Thursday or Friday of last week, I ended up calling the woman who taught my prison class back in high school. And I kind of launched into this rant, and she very politely paused me and goes, "Sophie, what is it that actually made you care about this issue in the first place?" And I was like, yeah, what made me care about this issue in the first place? If you hadn't picked up on this already, in addition to not being Hindu, I'm white. And as such, this racially discriminatory system is not going to racially discriminate against me. That is just the reality. But I said to her, I honestly think any person who had the opportunity to take that class, to receive that comprehensive of an education on just how royally screwed up and inhumane, unfair the prison system is as we have it now, I truly think that anyone would have the basic human empathy to at least start to think about these things, at least start to care. And that's when it kind of clicked for me. I think at the end of the day, empathy is kind of what this is all about. Empathy is the core thing most sorely lacking from the prison system and its very design. Empathy, I think, is what resonated with me about context specificity in the first place. To be empathetic is to do your very best, to make your most concerted effort, to understand the particular circumstances behind someone's particular action, even when those circumstances are wholly different from your own. To engage with that understanding, to act on that understanding, that is the beginning of true justice. Thank you.
Sophie, thank you for that. I'm David.
Hi.
So after this experience of this class in your first semester, share with us what you're thinking as you contemplate next semester and the rest of your time here at Middlebury. How has this influenced you and changed you in how you're approaching the rest of your education here at Middlebury?
Yeah, so I came in here with no idea what I wanted to study at all. And this semester I'm taking sociology. And I mean, I'm like 3 classes in, but what's been really interesting about sociology is that it seems like kind of a place where we can explore the marriages that exist between things like culture and the things that were interesting to me, like as a child about Hinduism, things like philosophy, how we are thinking about ideas of equality and justice, and the actual function of society, how we form systems and networks that make a society function. And so career-wise, I don't exactly know what I'm thinking, but I think sociology as a field could be a really valuable avenue for me to think about how we can incorporate social justice in a way that is empathetic and human.
See my song and I'm a rocker.